Something happens when you stop fighting life, not immediately, but quietly, slowly, in the way that real change always moves. Things begin to align, doors open that you didn't knock on, people appear who carry exactly what you needed. Clarity arrives where there was only confusion before, and none of it came from trying harder, it came from finally letting go. Welcome to Mindfulness. Today we're going deep into one of the most beautiful and most misunderstood teachings in Buddhist wisdom, the art of stepping out of your own way and allowing the universe to guide you toward the life that was always meant for you. We'll explore why your resistance has been costing you more than you know, what it truly means to surrender without losing yourself, and how to begin living in alignment with something far wiser than the anxious planning mind. This one is for anyone who is tired of forcing and ready to finally flow. 1. The current you were never meant to swim against. Most of us were taught very early that life rewards those who push the hardest, work harder, want it more, force the door open if it won't budge. And so we became experts at effort, at willpower, at grinding through resistance like it was a virtue. And for a while, it seems to work. But then, there are the moments when nothing works. When you've done everything right, and still the relationship ends. The opportunity disappears, the plan collapses, and instead of asking what those moments are trying to tell you, most people just push harder. They double the effort, tighten the control, fill the silence with more doing. Because stopping feels like losing, stillness feels dangerous, surrender feels like weakness. But here is what ancient Buddhist understanding quietly points to. The universe is not a wall to break through, it is a current, and you were never meant to swim against it. You were meant to learn how it moves. There is a principle that runs through Buddhist philosophy that most people misunderstand. It is often called non-doing, but it has nothing to do with laziness or indifference. It is the practice of aligning your actions with what is natural, what is real, what is already in motion. Think of a sailor who doesn't fight the wind. They read it, they work with it, they arrive somewhere they could never have reached by rowing alone. That's not passivity, that's a higher form of intelligence. And it starts with a recognition that most people avoid. The recognition that your plan, your timeline, your idea of how things should go might not be the wisest thing in the room. The moment you soften that grip, even slightly, something in your life begins to breathe again. You don't have to abandon ambition, you just have to stop mistaking tension for progress. Because the universe has been trying to guide you all along. You've just been too busy arguing with it to notice. 2. The language the universe has always been speaking. Here is something worth sitting with. Every time you have forced something in your life, really forced it, how did it end? Think of the relationship you held on to past its natural end. The job you stayed in because leaving felt too uncertain. The version of yourself you kept performing because you didn't know who you'd be without it. Forcing always costs more than it gives. It drains something essential from you. And what's strange is that the things that arrived with ease, the friendship that began without effort, the opportunity that appeared when you weren't looking, the moment of clarity that came during a quiet walk, those things tend to carry more life in them, more meaning, more staying power. This isn't coincidence. Buddhist wisdom teaches that there is a natural intelligence woven into existence itself, not a distant force making decisions for you, but a deeper current of rightness that runs beneath the surface of everything. And your nervous system knows how to feel it. You've felt it before, that subtle pull towards something you couldn't quite explain. The quiet inner knowing that said yes before your mind had reasons. The sense of wrongness that showed up in your body long before your thoughts caught up. That is the universe communicating with you, not in grand signs or dramatic revelations, in the quiet language of resonance. The problem is that most people have been trained to override that language, to follow the plan instead of the feeling. to choose the logical option over the one that feels alive. And so the inner compass gets ignored. Not because it stopped working, but because the noise of constant doing drowned it out. Slowing down is not a luxury. It is how you learn to hear again. 3. Emptying the cup, so life can fill it. There is a quiet teaching that has been passed through contemplative traditions for centuries, and it says this: you are not separate from life, you are an expression of it. Read that again slowly. You are not a person moving through a world that is indifferent to you. You are part of the same living system that moves the tides, turns the seasons, grows the forest from a single seed. And that system is not random. It has intelligence. It has direction. It has a kind of knowing that far exceeds what the thinking mind can access. But here is where it gets personal. The degree to which you can be guided by that intelligence depends almost entirely on one thing: how much space you create inside yourself to receive it. A cup that is already full cannot receive anything new. And most people are full of worry about what hasn't happened yet, full of replaying what already has, full of the constant noise of planning and judging and second-guessing. There is nothing wrong with you for being this way. It is what the modern world trains you toward. But the ancient path points in a different direction. It says, empty yourself, not of purpose or desire, but of the rigid insistence that you already know how everything should go. Because the moment you create that inner spaciousness, something remarkable starts to happen. Guidance arrives, not always as a voice or a vision, sometimes as a gentle shift in energy, a door that suddenly opens, a conversation that changes everything, a feeling of rightness about a direction you hadn't considered before. The universe is always speaking. Your only job is to become quiet enough to hear it. 4. The art of releasing what you cannot control. There is a particular kind of suffering that comes not from what life does to you, but from what you do to life when you refuse to accept it. You know this suffering. It lives in the space between how things are and how you decided they should be. And the gap between those two things, that is where most human pain is quietly generated. Not in the events themselves, but in the resistance to them. Buddhist understanding has a word for this clinging, and it describes it not as a moral failing, but as a misunderstanding, a case of mistaken identity. You cling to outcomes because somewhere deep down, you believe that if you control enough variables, you can make yourself safe, you can make yourself loved, you can make life fair. But life was never a negotiation, and the sooner you stop treating it like one, the sooner something in you relaxes into a peace you didn't know was possible. Releasing control doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop confusing caring with gripping. You can want something deeply and still hold it lightly. You can move toward a goal with full commitment and still remain unattached to a specific outcome. This is one of the most subtle and most liberating distinctions in all of Buddhist thought. Because when you release the outcome, you free your energy. Instead of spending yourself on worry and resistance, that energy becomes available for actual presence, for actual action, for the kind of clear seeing that lets you respond to what is real, rather than what you fear. The universe can only guide something that is moving freely. A river cannot flow through a closed fist. Open your hand, not because nothing matters, but because everything you truly need has a better chance of reaching you when you stop blocking the way. 5. Why your struggles are not punishments. If you have been going through a hard season, if things have been falling apart in ways you didn't choose and couldn't prevent, I want to say something directly to you. What you are experiencing is not evidence that you are doing life wrong. It is not punishment. It is not proof that you are unlucky or unworthy or somehow behind where you should be. In Buddhist understanding, difficulty is not the opposite of growth. It is often the mechanism of it, not because suffering is good, but because certain openings in a person can only happen when the structures they built around themselves begin to crack. Think about the times in your life when you changed most deeply, when your perspective shifted at the root? Were those times of smooth sailing, or were they the times when something broke, when the plan failed, when the loss arrived, when the life you had carefully constructed suddenly didn't hold? Most people, when they are in those moments, believe they are falling behind. But something else is often happening. The universe is reorganizing around a truer version of you. One that couldn't emerge while you were holding everything so tightly together. This doesn't make the pain less real. It doesn't ask you to pretend difficulty is pleasant, but it does invite you to consider that what feels like an ending might be a clearing, that what looks like failure might be redirection, that the universe doesn't break what it's finished with. It breaks what it's ready to rebuild into something more honest, more aligned, more alive. Your struggles are not setbacks on the path. In ways you may not yet be able to see, they are the path. 6. Trusting the timing you cannot see. One of the hardest things to accept in a world obsessed with speed is that some things cannot be rushed. Not because life is cruel or indifferent to your readiness, but because certain gifts require a specific kind of preparation inside you before they can be received. You have probably experienced this. The thing you wanted desperately at one point in your life and then received later, and realized in receiving it that the earlier version of you would have wasted it, misused it, or simply not known what to do with it. The timing wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Buddhist philosophy holds a deep respect for natural timing. Not the timing of clocks and calendars, but the timing of ripening, of readiness, of alignment between what you are and what you are moving toward. A fruit does not force itself off the tree before it is ready. The tree does not apologize for the season. There is a wisdom in the waiting that the impatient mind cannot access. And here is what most people miss. The waiting is not empty. It is not wasted time between the important moments. The waiting is where you are being shaped, where old patterns are quietly dissolving, where new capacities are forming beneath the surface in ways you cannot yet measure or see. When you stop fighting the timeline and start trusting it, something shifts in how you move through your days. There is less urgency, less anxiety about being behind, less comparison with people on different paths entirely. And in that spaciousness, life begins to feel less like a race you are losing, and more like an unfolding you are part of. Trust the timing, not blindly, but with the quiet confidence of someone who understands that the universe has never once been early or late. It arrives exactly when the ground is ready. 7. How to actually step out of the way. This is where most spiritual content leaves you hanging. It speaks beautifully about surrender and trust and flow, and then offers nothing practical. No bridge between the idea and the lived experience. So let's build that bridge together, because stepping out of the way is not a feeling that arrives one day and stays forever. It is a practice, a daily moment by moment, returning to a particular quality of inner orientation. And it begins with something almost embarrassingly simple. It begins with noticing. Not meditating for hours, not having a breakthrough experience on a mountaintop, just noticing. Noticing when you are in resistance, noticing when your jaw is tight and your thoughts are spinning and your energy is contracted around something that hasn't gone the way you wanted. That noticing is not a small thing. Most people live their entire lives inside that contraction, without ever once stepping back far enough to see it. You cannot change what you cannot see. And the moment you see the resistance, you are already slightly outside of it. You have created a tiny but real gap between you and the pattern, and that gap is where your freedom lives. From that gap, you can ask a question that changes everything. The question is not, why is this happening to me? That question keeps you at the center of a story where you are the victim of circumstances. The question that opens space is this: what is this moment asking of me? Not demanding, not forcing, asking. Because life is always asking something of you. Sometimes it is asking for patience, sometimes for courage, sometimes for the willingness to walk away from something you have outgrown. Sometimes it is simply asking you to be still and stop filling the silence with noise. When you shift from resisting the moment to listening to it, your entire relationship with life changes. You stop being someone things happen to and start being someone in genuine conversation with existence itself. The second part of this practice is learning to act from stillness rather than from anxiety. Most people make decisions from a place of fear, urgency, or the need to relieve the discomfort of uncertainty, and decisions made from that place tend to create more of what they were trying to escape. Acting from stillness doesn't mean waiting indefinitely. It means pausing long enough before you move to check whether the action you're about to take is coming from fear or from clarity, from grasping or from genuine direction. There is a felt difference between the two. Fear-based action has a kind of tightness to it, a desperation, a need to control the outcome. Clarity-based action feels different, quieter, more grounded, less attached to how things look, and more aligned with what is true. When you learn to feel that difference inside your own body, you have found your inner compass. And the third part of this practice is perhaps the most challenging for people who have spent their lives being responsible, capable, and self-sufficient. It is the practice of asking for help, not just from other people, but from life itself, from the intelligence that moves through everything. This might sound abstract, but in practical terms it looks like this. Instead of beginning your day by immediately filling it with tasks and plans and problems to solve, you take one quiet moment and you set an intention of openness. Not a request for a specific outcome, just a genuine inner statement that says, I am open to being guided today. I am willing to be surprised. I am available to what wants to move through me rather than only what I have already decided should happen. That single practice done consistently begins to rewire the way you move through your life. You start noticing things you would have walked past before, conversations that turn out to be exactly what you needed, quiet inner promptings that lead somewhere meaningful, a sense of being accompanied rather than alone in the work of living. Stepping out of the way is not one dramatic moment of surrender. It is 1,000 small moments of choosing openness over control, choosing presence over planning, choosing trust over the familiar comfort of anxiety. And each time you make that choice, you make it a little easier to make it again. 8. The life that waits on the other side. There is a version of your life that you have not yet lived. Not because it is out of reach, not because you are not enough or haven't worked hard enough or haven't suffered enough to deserve it, but because it exists on the other side of a particular kind of letting go that you have been circling for a long time without quite stepping through. And I want to describe that life to you. Not as a fantasy, not as a promise of perfection, but as a real and available way of moving through the world that becomes possible when you stop being at war with your own existence. In that life, you wake up, and there is a quality of openness to the day that doesn't depend on the day going a specific way. You still have preferences, you still move toward things that matter to you, but there is no desperate grip around any of it. You can hold your hopes without being imprisoned by them. You can face uncertainty without being undone by it, because you have developed a trust, not a naive or passive trust, but a deep and earned trust in the intelligence that moves beneath everything. In that life, your relationships change. When you stop needing people to be a certain way, to feel okay, something remarkable happens. You begin to actually see them, not the version of them you need for your own comfort, but the real, complicated, beautiful, imperfect human beings they actually are. And that kind of seeing creates a depth of connection that the controlling, anxious version of relating can never access. Your work changes too. When you stop performing for approval and start moving from genuine inner direction, the quality of what you create shifts entirely. There is a difference that people can feel, even if they cannot name it, between something made from fear and something made from presence. The things you make from presence carry life in them. They reach people in ways that strategic, calculated output never quite manages. And perhaps most importantly, your relationship with yourself changes. The inner critic that has been running commentary on your every move begins to lose its authority, not because you defeated it, but because you found something underneath it that is quieter and truer. A part of you that was never broken, never behind, never in need of being fixed. That part has always been there. Underneath the noise of the voice that says you are not enough, underneath the exhaustion of the endless effort, underneath all of it, there is something in you that is completely at peace. It has been watching everything, waiting patiently, not judging the journey, just holding space for the moment you would remember it was there. And when you find that part of yourself, when you learn to move from that place rather than from the anxious surface of your personality, the universe stops feeling like something you have to fight or figure out or earn. It starts feeling like home, like something you are part of rather than something you are struggling against. The guidance you have been looking for was never hidden. It was just waiting for the noise to quiet enough to be heard. And the life you have been working so hard to build is already moving toward you. It always has been. You just have to get out of its way. If something in this touched you, it's because part of you already knows this is true. You have always known. The path forward doesn't require more effort. It requires a different quality of presence, a willingness to trust what you cannot yet see. If this is the kind of wisdom you want to keep returning to, subscribe and stay close. Share this with someone who is tired of forcing life and ready to flow with it instead. The universe is already moving in your direction. All you have to do is let it.